Whether writing or speaking, we all use certain appeals to make our communication effective. However, what a lot of people don't realize is that these appeals have names and are highly discussed within the field of academia. We have here with us today Dr. Phoebe Smith, a professor in English from Yale University. Dr. Smith has written a book called The Art of Rhetoric, which will be available January 2011. Dr. Smith, we're delighted to have you with us today.
Thanks, Terry. I'm glad to be here.
Dr. Smith, what would you say that you most focus on within the field of English?
I would say that I'm mostly concerned with the functions of rhetoric in society, both in present day and throughout history. I teach courses not only on the basic fundamentals of rhetoric, but also on the implications of rhetoric. Most recently, I've been writing on the topic of rhetorical appeals, which is the subject of my new book.
Now, what exactly are rhetorical appeals?
Rhetorical appeals are the different strategies that we use when we're constructing an argument. These appeals are ethos, logos, and pathos, which refer to credibility, logic, and emotion, respectively. Ethos, logos, and pathos were actually defined in Aristotle's Rhetoric.
Aristotle writing about rhetorical strategies? That's interesting. Most people probably think of him as a philosopher.
Well, Aristotle was a writer too. He would have been quite accustomed to having to use effective argumentative writing in order to support his philosophy.
That's an interesting point. Could you give us a little more detail about what ethos, logos, and pathos are?
Certainly. Ethos, as I've said earlier, refers to credibility. One of the things that a reader should consider is how credible the text is. We can invoke ethos by saying, I'm a professor at such and such university, or I'm a medical doctor, or we can borrow from the credibility of others. That's actually what we're doing when we quote someone. Logos is the appeal to logic. It's organizing your argument in a logical manner that flows with supporting evidence. The clearer the logic in the piece, the more persuasive of an argument you have. And pathos is the appeal to emotion. Whenever you're reading or listening to something that's tugging at your heartstrings, that's pathos in action.
I see. So, really, these are all elements that we use without even realizing it.
Exactly. We use these approaches because we know from experience the best ways to argue things. However, realizing that these approaches are being used in all types of persuasive writing or speaking can help us to be more discriminating with what we believe.
You know, that sounds particularly helpful with the general election that is coming around the corner.
Exactly. You see political advertisements on TV and you don't stop to ask about how credible the claims are or if they're trying to manipulate you with pathos.
So, essentially, it's really important for everyone to be aware of ethos, logos, and pathos, right? It seems like even mathematics or physicists could really use these rhetorical appeals to analyze the things they come into contact with through books or television or even the radio.
Definitely. These strategies are absolutely important to understand, not only so that you can use them while constructing arguments, but so that you can deconstruct other people's arguments as well.
Is that what your new book is about?
Absolutely. In The Art of Rhetoric, I discuss the rhetorical strategies in much greater depth. I explore Aristotle's text on the subject and suggest the ways in which the strategies can be used in the world of academia today.
It sounds like a book that will definitely appeal to scholars in your field, but what about people who don't know anything about rhetoric?
While my book might be considered a scholarly text, I think it's also accessible to those who are curious about rhetoric and want to improve his or her abilities as a rhetorician.
Well, Dr. Smith, thank you so much for being with us today on Fresh Air. Dr. Smith's book, The Art of Rhetoric, is an enlightening read and will be available at booksellers everywhere in January.